Hello, and welcome to part 4 of 31. I'm going to jump straight into it. The victim walked in unexpectedly. It ended up not being any of the ones in the cafe, but someone who had made a call-in order. The bell hanging in front of the door rang, and a short, stocky man in his late 30s or early 40s walked in, heading straight to the counter. He looked like a man who had lived his whole life working outside. His face was weathered with too much sun, and his clothes were stained with oil and grease. He probably worked in the oilfield industry somewhere. "Hey, Susan," he said when the other waitress walked around the counter. "Hey, Harold." She smiled and went to the warming station, picking up a styrofoam cup with a lid on it and a white sack from underneath the heat lamp. The bottom of the sack looked nearly as stained with grease as the man's clothing. Taking them to the counter, she set them down in front of him and took a $10 bill out of his hand he offered. "$7.88, she said. Nodding, he said, "Yeah, I know." He picked up the cup and the sack and turned to leave. "Keep the change." Laughing, she opened the register and nodded as she placed the money in and took out the change. "Yeah, I know." She dropped the change into her apron as he was walking out the door. "See you tomorrow." "See ya." He gave her a half wave as he walked into the parking lot, heading towards a large tanker truck next to the diesel pumps. The demon smiled. "Looks like we get a ride in a truck today." Now, I need to apologize as I explain the next few hours, because to be honest, they were boring. We sat in the cab and rode with him while he ate his greasy bacon, egg, and cheese toaster and listened to non-stop news radio all the way to our first stop. It wasn't like CNN or Fox or any of the other buy stations either, but straight, simple, and to the point news and weather coverage. Oh, and by the way, tomorrow it's going to be partly cloudy with a slight chance of rain. Trust me, I know. I have it memorized. The man showed no emotion to any of the stories either. He just sat there staring straight ahead as in his worn-out seat, munching on his food, sipping his coffee, and shifting gears when he had to. When we got to the first site, we found ourselves sitting in a pasture out in the country, parked in front of a couple of large white storage cylinders. Oil wells buzzed all around us. He took a hose from the truck, hooked it up to the containers, and started pumping them into his truck. The entire time he just stood there and watched the numbers on the meter mounted on the side of the truck. When he was through, he turned off the valves, unhooked everything, put everything back in its proper place, double-checked everything to make sure, and we moved on to the next location. "You had to pick the most boring man in the world, didn't you?" the demon said by the time we had left our fourth site. "He hasn't given me anything to work with. I want to say he's probably lonely since he hasn't received one phone call today, but I don't even know if he even has a phone. Have you seen a phone? I haven't." He shows no emotion to the music. He showed none to the news. He does everything by the book. He cleans the equipment. He doesn't complain. He doesn't grunt. He doesn't even mumble. He just stares straight ahead like a zombie. He's worse than an NPC. "An NPC?" I asked. He waved off my question as if it wasn't important. "You know, an NPC, a non-player character. It's something we like to get certain people's brains programmed to do. Give the same responses over and over. The kind of people you can't have an actual conversation with. We'll get to that later." He stuck his thumb out towards the man. "But this guy here? 10 times worse. How am I supposed to get energy from such an emotionless person?" "Get energy?" "Yes, get energy. That's how we function." His aggravation was growing. "The more negative people we are around, the more energy we get. That's how it works." I wasn't exactly sure what the demon meant, and he didn't seem to want to share any more information, so we rode in silence the rest of the day. 12 hours in total. The man never even went back to town. At lunch, he found a shade tree and sat under it while drinking water and eating 2 sandwiches. Once he was done, he was back to work, and we were driving on to the next location. I had to agree with the demon. It was an incredibly boring day. But at the same time, I was kind of glad. One thing which had been bugging me since we left the cafe that morning was me having a hand, in screwing over a person's life. I still wasn't even sure if any of this was real or not, or if it was just an illusion, but still, I didn't want to have that in my consciousness. It was short-lived, though. It was nearly dark when the truck pulled into a large yard full of other trucks. The man parked his truck, turned in his paperwork at the office, nodded goodbye to a few other truckers staying around, and went to an old beat-up pickup. It had been red once, but most of the paint was peeled off now. Once all three of us were inside, the demon shook his head. I could feel the anger pulsating from him. He looked down at the candy wrappers, empty soda bottles, and greasy to-go bags littering the floorboard. Well, I can tell you this much. This imbecile has to be single. This guy's a slob. He eats trash, but he doesn't seem to care. How he doesn't have a gut 10 times bigger than the one he has, I have no clue. I sure hope he gives us something to work with when we get to his house. If not, I'll have to scratch this day off as wasted, and I hate scratching off an entire day's worth of energy. Again with the energy. I was going to have to learn more about this, but for now I decided it wasn't the right time to be asking the demon questions. He didn't seem to be in a very good mood. Half an hour later, after making a stop at a fast food restaurant and then a convenience store where he purchased a couple of newspapers, we pulled up into an old run-down trailer house way out in the country. Junk was everywhere. Old lawnmowers, broken down cars, cement blocks, washers, dryers, high grass. There was even a toilet with what looked like irises growing out of it. "We may be onto something," the demon said, smiling for the first time in several hours. "What do you mean?" I couldn't see how a yard full of junk gave him information. He pointed towards the porch where two newspapers were rolled up. "Why does he need 4 sets of newspapers?" Zipping out of the pickup, he went to the newspapers and looked down at them, and I followed. His smile widened. "He picked up a Dallas newspaper and an Oklahoma City newspaper, right?" "I think so." "These two here?" He looked down at them. "It looks like they have the symbols of the Los Angeles and the New York Times. Doesn't that seem a little odd to you?" He moved to the side as the man approached and picked up the 2 newspapers, adding them to the others tucked under his arms. He was also beginning to whistle, which in itself was odd, as he juggled the bag of food and his drink while placing the key to the lock on the door. Once inside, he flicked on the light, and the demon rushed in the house. The moment inside, he howled with excitement. "Jackpot! We have us a winner here!" And that was it. I sat up in the bed, blinking, and tried my best to remember all the dream I'd just had. I hurried to the computer and wrote down everything the best I could, and that's where we're at the moment, waiting to see what happens next. Thank you again for watching, and tomorrow we're going to continue and see where this goes. Have a good day.